Welcome to Outdoor Gear Chat. This is episode 51, where we are talking careers, motherhood and mountains, recorded live from the Barrel House at Kendal Film Festival. No, it's not Kendal Film Festival. I'm just doing that especially to wind Jacqui up, because we've had a couple of conversations and she's like, it's definitely not the film festival anymore, Cathy. It is the Mountain Festival.
It is a film festival, but it's not the full title.
But at the Kendal Festival is about so much more.
It certainly is.
Films. Yeah, so this is my challenge to make sure I say the right thing. So a great start. I am your host. My name is Cathy Casey, and I am the co-owner and director of Hooked on Granite Limited, which nobody knows. You will know my company better as the Climber Shop in Ambleside and the Joe Brown shops in Llanberis and Capel Curig. I don't use this word lightly, they are iconic shops because my husband and I, who own the business, are standing on the shoulders of giants. Joe Brown, Val Brown, who started the Joe Brown shops, Frank Davies, who started the Climber Shop in 1959. It's our 65th anniversary this year. I am joined here at Kendal Mountain Festival with a very, I can't actually stress how important this lady is. The reason that Kendal Mountain Festival is here, and it's so fantastic, and it is full of wonderful people that feels almost like joining your mountain family. It is Jacqui Scott. Welcome, Jacqui.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. So you are obviously embedded completely and totally in the Kendal Mountain Festival, but is this your first time on stage talking about it?
Yeah, I don't tend to get in front of the audience, so I'm completely out of my comfort zone. So be gentle on me.
Oh, no, that makes two of us. That makes two of us, because I generally work behind the scenes in our business on the marketing side and the HR side and the health and safety side, and I don't generally work on the shop floor. I love it when I do, absolutely love it, talking with customers, just going and doing stuff, but I don't get out much, so I am equally way out of my comfort zone. So we're going to talk about the 2024 festival theme, which is balance, and we are going to look at that as a noun, really. So looking maybe at balance as the power or means to decide, and we're going to talk about our careers, motherhood, mountains, not necessarily in that order. I realised when I wrote the title that was perhaps not the right or best order to put them in. But we're going to talk about our journeys into the outdoor industry, because they're both very unique. The career paths that we've carved to lead to this point, and I'm sure neither of us woke up as little girls thinking, I know what I'm going to do. And we're going to talk about how we have balanced, or perhaps juggled is a better word, our families, and because they're an integral part of who we are, and how the power of the mountain environment has played a role in our journeys. And finally, look at how we use the privilege of having the means to decide our career paths, literally because we've been born into a particular part of the planet. It is a huge privilege that a lot of women don't have. And how we can sort of leave a legacy for those starting their own journey into the industry. So it's a bit heavy for a Sunday morning, actually. When I wrote that, I was like, yeah, but there's going to be fun because I'm going to get it wrong lots and make loads of mistakes. So we'll crack on. So first up, our journeys into the outdoor industry. It's not often a career choice given out at school. And so how did you get started in the industry?
How long's the podcast? So, I remember going to the careers advisor when I was at school, and, wasn't exactly giving me a list of things to do, but I think I wrote down every job I didn't want to do, so that helped. I did a degree in political science. Quite fancy being a politician at one stage.
Wow.
Obviously, that's gone well. But no, it's how I've ended up into it is because I had a passion for skiing. I wasn't privileged to been taking skiing as a child. I'd never even seen snow. But when I went to university, I just decided that was what I was going to do. For some reason, why, I thought that was my future. So my first ski trip involved me buying a pair of waterproof pants that were made of plastic and a plastic jacket, more or less. But the classic was that we had no one to take us up to the mountain, which is in New Zealand, you ski in on a volcano called Mount Ruapehu in Whakapapa. And so I went on the radio and asked if there was anyone over the age of 25 who could help me rent a minivan so I could take all my friends skiing. And a German guy did.
No
He
way.
came along, yeah. So he rented the van and took us skiing. So we stayed in a friend's parents' batch, which in New Zealand means there's no heating in winter. I mean, it was ridiculous. And it was about an hour drive to the mountains. And my first ski run was called Happy Valley, and that summed up my whole skiing experience. I've never been happier in my life than going down Happy Valley. It was amazing. So that just kind of made me realize it was something I just really loved, which was the outdoors. And as I said, I didn't grow up skiing. I grew up in New Zealand, so you always got the outdoors, but my family did things, but it wasn't like I'm saying, oh, my parents were taking me on big trips or anything like that. It was just purely for some bizarre reason. I like Switzerland, actually. I really like the mountains in Switzerland. I thought at one stage I was going to be a vet on a safari in Switzerland. I don't think that's practical.
A safari in Switzerland?
Yeah, I got confused. But I have lived in Switzerland. I'm certainly not a vet because I can't actually deal with blood. And I have been on a safari, so yeah, I'm nearly there. So yeah, that's how kind of it started, that I just became passionate about skiing, and then I worked in a ski shop. And I could tell you how the story I've got that job, which I don't think I can I, Pam? No, I can't tell you that story. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I started, just having a passion for skiing, bizarrely.
So, well, moving on from these censored, which perhaps we'll record a later date for an over 18, not a Sunday morning venue.
Let's just say it was typical 1980s behaviour by the shop owners.
Yeah. If anybody's watched Rivals at the moment.
Yeah, it was.
Let's move swiftly on. I suppose that my family as well, we never went on activity holidays. A holiday was like, right, we're at the beach, there's the sunbed, there's the towel, that's us all day. And I suppose I didn't really think to question it, and I just thought, cool, that's how you have holidays. But when I was at senior school, all of my friends who were more active than I was, really, they were all like lifeguards and stuff, and I definitely wasn't naturally sporty. I was in the bottom class in PE with all the girls who had perms and were pregnant, and it was pretty rough school. So I just figured I wasn't like any good at sport, and they all wanted to go and start the Duke of Edinburgh's award, and I was thinking like, I'm not sure about that. But I didn't want to be left alone at lunchtime, basically. So I thought, I'll go along. And we did our bronze, and they all had a horrendous time. And I just put a rucksack on. It's the first time I'd ever put a rucksack on. Borrowed my cousin's boots. I too had boil in the bag rainwear for that trip. Bright orange Peter Storm, definitely of a vintage. And I loved it. I just thought everyone was whinging and whining. I thought, this is great. You can, like, walking through fields. I've never really done this before. And I discovered that out of the 4 or 5 of us, I could do the navigation as well. Now, my husband's going to guffaw out loud when he hears that, because it's not a strong point if I'm not practicing on a regular basis. But at that particular time, it was a strength that I discovered, and then we did a climbing exploration for our silver. And again, they were like, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And I'm like, I'm not sure about this at all. And suddenly when we got to the bottom of the crag at Simmons Yat, and I discovered I'd been pushed forward to go first. And so I did. And I got to the top, and I thought, that was all right. And then the others came up and they fell off and whinged and whined. And I just thought, this is actually a sport I can do where falling off and failing but still getting to the top makes it a success. And that was a bit of a light bulb moment, really. I thought, I like this. I could do this. And that was really like the pivotal part. And from there, I joined the Air Cadets and did any kind of mountain activity course that I could do. And my parents are like, oh, okay. and then while I was at school, I was just going to work in the Little Chef for the summer. And there was a community lead guy at the school, and he said, oh, you like doing outdoor stuff, why don't you go and get a job? So I was 16, I bought a copy of High magazine. There was an outdoor centre in North Wales advertising for assistant instructors, and you got paid £50 a week, and £40 a week was your food and lodging, so my take-home pay was £10 a week. which at the time still didn't buy much beer, but that's pretty much what it bought. And I did that. I took myself up on the train, had an interview, and that was it. That was that. I didn't go to university. I just went and carried on working basically from there. So
I think it's interesting what you said about when you were young, because I do remember now I went on some of the YMCA camps, and because same thing, my family wasn't taking me to the outdoors like that, and I just absolutely loved the fact that you could be outside. It was so calming. I was very academic, so it was just lovely to be sort of in a safe, quiet space. Although we used to have a lot of eels in New Zealand, and I used to hate going in rivers, and even now can put me in the sea because I'm always scared of eels. But it was one of those things. I just thought if children get those opportunities, so many of them resonate with that space, and it just stays in you. It sort of gets imprinted in your DNA quite quickly. And the same thing, my family have now said, we don't know who you were, how you changed into this outdoor person, like it was some sort of weird sort of thing to have done. I'm like, well, maybe it was always there. I just needed someone to give me the opportunity to be who I wanted to be.
Yeah, and we're just so fortunate to have had those opportunities, and then identify those opportunities and run with them and just see where those opportunities
I think
lead.
it's also to acknowledge that if you enjoy it, to do something about it. You know, it's you can enjoy life, and if that's what makes you happy, you don't have to do other sort of pathways to have the confidence that's making you happy.
Very definitely. And you actually said a really key thing in the start, and that's like know what you don't want to do, because you might not know what you want to do, but having a very clear idea of what you do not want to do sets you on a path, and that leads to other paths.
I had a really long list. You name it. I wasn't doing it.
Has it got longer with age? I don't know.
I haven't even thought about that anymore.
So that's kind of our entry into the outdoors, and picking up a career in the outdoors. How did that look for you? And at what point did you wake up and think, oh no, I'm going to run a globally famous mountain festival? A very potted version of that path. How did that come about?
I never woke up one morning and thought I was going to run a mountain festival. Well, after I finished university and still loving skiing, I went and did ski seasons. So this is classic. I had a one-way ticket to London, not the UK, England, Britain. I only knew about London because I'd watched Coronation Street once and got scared of the rest of the country. So I was like, which I still am actually. If I hear that music, it freaks me out. So I was going to London. Anyway, I got a one-way ticket. It took me 5 years to get there. I keep doing ski seasons because you do a ski season, then you stay for the summer, and the summer's so addictive. And then I learned my first climbing went for this, was in Yosemite. I mean, how amazing is that?
Awesome,
I still can't climb very well. But that was that. And you just got to do mountain biking. So I just got totally hooked on this lifestyle. Having said that, I was in Aspen, so I was basically an extra in the lifestyles of the rich and famous. So all the movie stars and all the rich people, including Trump, believe it or not, I used to just wait on them and look after their kids and pick their garden weeds and all the sort of stuff. I've got lots of stories I can't tell you about, but I probably should have signed a Secrecy Act. So yeah, I just kind of continued on having that outdoor sort of experience, but not specifically working in the outdoors. I was a waiter, of course, because you make good money, and then it allows you to have lifestyle. And then I traveled extensively, went around the world a few times backpacking, you know, all the sort of things you do in your 20s, then came to the UK and got a job in a whitewater rafting company in London. Now, obviously, you're going...
I've got, like, knitted eyebrows over that one. Yeah. How does that work?
This is a classic. So first of all, though, just like to point it out, I was living in Earl's Court, because I'm a Kiwi, and then I worked in Covent Garden as a waitress. Tick 2 things, and shared a bed sit with my brother. So it was one of my highlights of my life. We still don't talk. No, we do talk. Anyway, there was a job advert to work for a company called Adrift, and they ran multi-day whitewater rafting trips around the world. So in Turkey, Zimbabwe, Nepal, Peru, you know, sort of these wonderful, wonderful trips. And so I applied for it, and actually I applied over fax. That's how long ago
Fantastic.
It was.
Yeah,
and I got the job, and they sent me to the Churu River in Turkey, in the far eastern Turkey, and they just told me where to go, and they told me that I was going to meet the rafting team out there. They didn't know I was coming because there was no communication with them. So I had to go and fly to Ankara, then fly out to Erzurum. I got stoned because I was a female traveling on my own. I was like, I can't believe I'm getting stoned. But anyway.
Oh, right. I thought you meant stoned like puff, but not...
I know not to say things like that. No, I actually got stoned, like stones thrown at me.
Yeah, right.
And then I just caught the bus up, and then I found where they were, and I just turned up and I said, oh, hi, I'm the new person working for your company. And they're like, oh, great, come on. So we went rafting. So I spent 2 years managing the company. And I think what the transformation for me there was that these people were going on these multi-day trips, anything from 7 to 14 days. Like I did a 21-day trip down the Omo River in Ethiopia. And you saw the transformation of these people that were really highly stressed or strung out from their jobs. They were in medical or, lawyers or, quite high intense jobs. And they'd start on this river journey. And after a day or two, they would transform into like proper humans again.
Yeah.
And we were sleeping under the stars. We were just, but we're working together as a team. And the best thing about a river journey is you can only go the pace of the river.
Yeah.
So even though you're collectively working together as a team, you're under the same sort of, you're just not competing against anything else, and everyone can do it. And you'd come off the river and they were transformed and they were so calm and so happy. And it really kind of made me go, there's real power out there, and they were better people for it, and we were better people for taking them on the journey. I mean, I was mostly working in London. And then then I'll get on to my motherhood, so I better jump around a bit. And so
we can go on to motherhood actually in the next one. Yeah.
So that's sort of the start of it, and then obviously there's usually sort of a man and a kid thrown in there, isn't there, somewhere along the way. A few kids, and so I continued the rafting. So I then ended up working in rafting back in New Zealand. Then I went and lived in Austria and Switzerland and Nepal and Japan, doing that and just seeing the transformation. I'd also like to say I'm a really bad kayaker, and I've taught kayaking all over the world. I've got scars from kayaking, and actually mountain biking as well. But, I am so bad at it, it's crazy. I just absolutely, I mean, how I got it, I felt like a fraud because I can't actually kayak. I pull my spray skirt off before I flip over in case I might flip, which is kind of pointless. So that's that. And then I ended up here. So I'd never been to Kendal before.
Right.
And I went near the Lake District. I thought Lake sounded great. I mean, and I'd been up here once before. I climbed Scarfell, Pike Peak, one of those ones.
Pike.
Yeah. Came up through London and did that. That's the only thing. I came up in January to Kendal.
The absolute best time of the year.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing.
Grey town.
Yeah, and that's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So and then I got a job working for the North Face when it was, in fact, it's just over there, the building there. So they just set up in the UK. They were running out of Glasgow through an agency.
Yes.
So I was involved. It was when the Nupsy jackets were like top of the range. Everyone had them. So I worked there for 2 years in marketing, and that's kind of how I ended up in the industry. And then the rest of it kind of continues on from there. So it was just seeing the transformation power of outdoors just made me feel it was an industry that I could really resonate with, and it had meaning.
I think that's very much what I took from it as well, because I started working in instruction, and that reciprocal, as you said, they were better people at the end, you guys were better people at the end. Excuse me, I worked with a number of kids from inner city Liverpool, and that had a huge number of challenges, but just plucking them out of their environment, plopping them into a completely alien environment where all of those rules, those urban rules had just gone, was fascinating, and it was so rewarding. I mean, sometimes it was just like, but of course, all the heftiest challenges give the biggest rewards, don't they? And living with the instructional team when you're young, you've got the group, after work, we'll go climbing in the quarries, we'll go climbing in the pass. It was contact with like-minded people, and it kind of felt, I'm always sort of wary about using the word tribe, but it did really feel like I can hang with these people, this is great, they're talking my language, and it felt like a continual pursuit of passion. Everybody's working hard, but then they were playing probably even harder because they were living in a part of the world that they wanted. And that shared passion just kind of took me through instruction. And I then decided to do a year's diploma in outdoor activities at Norwich College, of course. That's the first place you think to go to do an outdoor activity diploma. But I did that for a year, and I got all my basic qualifications or training qualifications, and I came out of that too old to have got a student grant, but too young to have got a mature student grant. So I funded that myself, or got a loan, and came out, finished with all of these training qualifications, which do not put you in a position to get a proper paying instructional job. And Mum had said, there's a job in the outdoor shop in Milton Keynes, you should go and work there for the summer. So I started there, and because I was like, actually, I don't have to get up and climb into a frozen wetsuit every morning. It's quite nice working inside, talking about kit. And that also was at the time when the Nupsy jacket and the North Face mountain jackets, that big black and coloured.
Classic.
Was all the rage. And I started working there. When I started working, I was, of course, the only woman. The manager there, Paul, had, unbeknown to me, taken all the male staff, well, all the staff basically to one side and said, look, we've got a female member of staff starting here. She's very experienced in outdoor activities. I don't want her upset. Nobody sleeps with her. This is just you just don't. We just want her to work here and feel safe and be part of the team. So about a year later, I ran off with him to India, basically.
Another classic.
So he neatly paved the way for himself. And so I ran off the boss. So we went to around India for 6 weeks and didn't argue. So I thought, boy, he's a keeper. And came back and decided what we wanted to do. We were living in Milton Keynes. We knew we didn't want to live in Milton Keynes. We were driving up and down the motorway every day off to go climbing. So we moved up to the Yorkshire Dales, worked for Lion Equipment, who were the distributors for Petzl at the time. Paul became a rep for them, got his job first, and we moved up. And I thought, moving from Milton Keynes, the city of opportunity, where literally the job paper is its own paper and it's the size of a broadsheet and it's like that thick every week. So moved up, I thought, I'll get a job. And we moved up and I got a copy of the Westmoreland Gazette and opened it to the job page and looked at the half a page of jobs and thought, I can't milk a cow. I can't build a dry stone wall either. I'm probably going to have to get a job in a pub, something like that. But just by sheer fortune, a job as an account manager came up at Lion Equipment. So I worked on behind the scenes, chasing debts, dealing with orders and stuff like that. But that got us to where we wanted to live, And but that was my sort of entry into the trade from there. And from working there, we then had the opportunity to work with Marmot, an American brand. They were distributor at the time. My husband applied to become the international sales manager for Marmot.
Fancy.
So we moved to the US, to California, for 2 years. At a point, we literally just got married. So I changed my name, and I had a visa that did not allow me to work. So I suddenly had changed my identity and became, for the first time in my life, financially dependent, which was shit, actually, especially because my husband was normally halfway around the world. He was working in Japan. He was global, so he was never home. And in America, you only get 2 weeks holiday a year, and most of that was spent coming back to see my parents. But it was a great time. It was a really important thing to do, to live abroad, and we were there for 3 years. Marmot said, right, you can have your green card. Paul, Cathy will arrange it so you can have a green card and work. There's a job for you here. And I think my exact words were, well, you can stay, darling. I'll be going home. And luckily, he decided he was coming home with me. So we came back and we started our own company to distribute Marmot in the UK. And that was Mountain Works, which is actually based in Kendal, round near where the dojo is, actually, just around there. So we had the business there for, I think we had that for about 6 or 7 years. And we had a number of brands. We had Marmot, we had Vask Footwear, Simond, climbing equipment, Moon climbing clothing, boulder pads, Lifelink backcountry skiing stuff. So that was a sales and marketing distribution, and that was our in, really. But we'd always known we wanted to do retail, but we could not find a way of financing it. And coming in and doing the sales and marketing agency was a way we could start with a manageable amount of finance and get our foot into the door, because we'd seen by that point all of these specialist shops. And if you pick up an old High magazine, for example, from the 1980s, there is a directory of hundreds of shops, all owned by climbers, all specialist in every town you can think of. They're pretty much gone. There's us and a handful of others. We're a dying breed. And we kind of thought that was going to happen. And our plan was to buy up the individual brands and have them trading with their own identities, but behind the scenes run them together to save costs. And we've done that. We've achieved that with the Climate Shop and Joe Brown's, and discovered that's enough. We don't want any more. But I suppose you just sort of said, kind of coming into motherhood, that amazing / deeply frustrating / growing / you want to kill everybody kind of stage.
All my kids listening at home, obviously not.
Of our lives.
Best decision of my life. Yeah.
How have you kind of found that balance, or as I said, perhaps juggled is a better word, because it is a continual plate spin. People think because you're a woman, naturally you understand what to do with babies when they arrive, and you're like, I don't know which end that came out of.
So I'd just like to point out, I don't really plan a lot. So yours sounds quite a lot of thought. I'm just going to put it out there. Don't look to me to expect a lot of thought to go into everything I've done. But I think that's a joy, because you just go with it and then you make the most of it. So when I married my first husband, my starter marriage, totally recommend it. I met him as a guide in Ethiopia. He's from England. And so my parents are like, or my mother, it's like, really? I'm like, yeah, it sounds great, Mum. This is perfect for us. So we got married in New Zealand and then went to Japan, got pregnant straight away. Who knew? That's how it works. Obviously no planning in that one. So great. So I was teaching rafting and English in Japan, also classic. Brilliant, learning to become a pregnant woman in Japan. No one could speak English. I can't speak Japanese. So we just used to have scans and we both look at each other and go, the doctor would go. I was
there was a thumbs up there for the benefit of the people listening on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry. Didn't know. All right. So, it was a big thumbs up. And then I went to Nepal, and also a great decision to make, your first time pregnancy. Why wouldn't you go to Nepal and be pregnant? It was a lot more conversations. So a classic story there, which I think is just worth talking about. I already knew I was having a girl, which I was delighted. Absolutely delighted. Well, you're delighted with whatever you get, aren't you? But I was delighted to have a female. So I went to have a scan, and you go into the scanning room, into the hospital, and I'm not joking, it's set up like this. There's chairs everywhere around you, with the chairs for about 30, 40 people. And I'm like, what's going on? They go, well, the whole family comes. As I said, I knew I was having a girl, and he scanned me, and he said, I'm so sorry to tell you. And I'm like, what? And he goes, you're having a girl. And I went, that's good news. He goes, I'm really sorry. And so he said, normally the family comes to watch to see how many.
Wow.
So that was Nepal for you. So every time people could see I was pregnant, would say, we wish for you a boy. And I'd go, what's a girl? And I'd go, we wish still it will be a boy. And I'm like, I don't think it works like that. We'll go with it. So what was my story I'm telling you?
Motherhood.
Motherhood, yes. I ended up having a baby. She's named Indus after the river, because her father did the first descent down the Indus River when he was a sort of a huge expedition kayaker. Made perfect sense at the time to name her after a river when I was living in Nepal. And then I ended up having her back in New Zealand, because they just wouldn't treat you in Nepal to have a baby for the first time. Yeah. So then I had another one that was here. Mm-hmm. And then I finished my starter marriage. And so now I have what's it after a starter?
The marriage of choice.
I'm in my main course marriage now. So we're a blended family. So Steve Scott, who's one of the directors of the festival, we have a blended family, but they've been together since our 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is great. So they've grown up together. They're now 23, 24, 25, and 26, which is really sweet. And then we had one together who's the youngest, who's 17, Senna. So that's kind of the mother side of it. As you can see, there wasn't a lot of any thought in that one. It just happened, which is great, yeah.
So I kind of feel a lightweight because I only have 2.
I'm nodding, sensible.
My first daughter came along 19 years ago, and because Paul and I had just been working together, put all of our all into the company, Molly arrived 7 weeks early, which was a real surprise, especially to the buyer from Snow and Rock who was staying with us that particular night. I went into labour, so that was an evening. So I had her in ambulance by the side of the road.
Wow. Oh.
And then we went on to hospital. But it was a massive shock. I mean, giving birth anyway is like a massive shock. But this was huge. And I think Paul was it just completely threw Paul. So I hadn't even packed a bag because it was still 7 weeks. And Paul had been traveling a lot, but he'd curtailed his traveling because he was still, even though we had our own business, he was European sales manager still for Marmot. So he looked after the German business for them. So he still travelled a lot, but he curtailed his travelling. And when I got to the hospital, I was like out of it. And Molly had to go into an incubator because she was so premature. And the midwife from heaven, they're all just like wonderful, just said, I'll get you some clothes. You can have a shower and a bath and everything. And she unzipped the bag and she's like, oh, is this your shirt? I was like, no. And she's like, these aren't your trousers, are they? No, they're not. And these definitely aren't your pants. No, my husband's packed for a business trip because he was really stressed. I went straight into labour. I'll get you a gown, she said. So I came out of hospital. Paul was actually in America when I came out of hospital at an interview because we'd discovered that there were going to be changes at Marmot, and he was like, I don't even know what that could mean, that it just goes away. I don't want to risk that. So he took another job with corporate, and I continued to run Mountain Works by myself. By that time, we had our own climbing, we were manufacturing our own climbing gear, zero-G climbing. So I ran that for 2, 3, 4 years, actually, on my own while Molly was growing up. And I just did that part-time. I just shrunk it right down, and that was fine. But, yeah, there was times when I was feeding the baby on the phone, sorting out an ISACS delivery, and that carried on. And then when I had Connie 4 years later, that was the point where I thought, right, I've either got to ramp up the business or I need to just close it. So I decided to close it at that point, and that was a really good decision. And I just worked part-time all the way through my kids' younger years. And actually, it was probably COVID where I had no choice, but got kicked into full-time work. Good and, well, more than full-time work. I'm sure you guys were the same, good and proper. But that was a really... I always consider that a huge luxury, being able to take that choice. And it's a choice you can take when you're your own boss. You know, I can't necessarily choose when you work, and maybe, you know, I was part-time during the hours of when the kids were awake, but then I'd work in the evening and the morning around that. But I think there's loads of skills that you get, like working exhausted, dealing with toddlers. There's all these little things that even now, you know, something will crop up at work, and I'm like, right, I've got this, because you're not 3 and you're not going to scream at me and punch me. So you can, there's all these sort of things that all these little skills as you go through your life, whatever career you choose, whether you choose to have kids or not, you know, or whether you're able to have children or not, there's loads of little skills that you pick up through life that then translate into your workplace. And definitely if you're doing outdoor things like you're rafting and you're in extreme environments or you're in wild environments where there's dynamic decision making and things like that, and it's really easy to then translate those back into your workplace. And people are like, well, what have you dealt with today? And I'm like, well, you know, I had to homeschool my child on a compound interest while writing a new employee manual. It's not a day I want to do again, but I did it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, having kids does give you a certain skill set. I'm not going to tell you I have any, actually. I don't know what my skill set is from that. But when I had my first, I went and lived in Switzerland with her. And she was 12 weeks old, and I got given the job of driving a long wheelbase minibus with a 16-foot double-wheeled trailer on the back.
No, not a trailer. I hate trailers.
Well, guess what? I can't even do that. So I took her with me, and I used to put her in the front seat, and she was the most awful baby. She cried nonstop, and I'd sing to her, and I can't sing either, so it's horrendous. But I learned to sort of drive this thing through these little tiny streets in Switzerland to pick up the rafting people, rock her, and just thinking, well, you know, you can do it. I think it's just having confidence in that, you know, nothing's impossible. You just got, you might not be perfect, but you just went and did it. And I think, you know, I'd say if anyone was listening to this and they were sort of, you know, thinking about balancing work and motherhood, is just to have confidence that you can do it, because there's no manual that's really correct. And I think that's also, I was really lucky to have lived there in Switzerland with no ability to have any access to the internet or any magazines, or even the health visitor that came to visit me. Once again, I couldn't speak the language. We both just did the thumbs up. Was that I had no pressure from outside to be the perfect mother or anything. I just had to be the person I was, looking after a child. I mean, I did drop her on her head. She got a fractured skull, so I'm not quite convinced I did it right all the time. But, I mean, it wasn't my fault, of course. That just happened. She did it. And so you just sort of learned along... Yeah, sorry. sorry, Indus. You learnt along the way. And I think once I had the others, when I was working for the North Face, I didn't even get, back then you got such little maternity leave, and they wouldn't even let me go back to working part-time after I had the second one, so it was before they changed the laws. So I lost my job. I mean, it's crazy now to say that, but they just went, well, you can't come back. So I had to swap jobs, and I went straight back to working full-time when the youngest was 14 weeks at nursery, and you just had to do it. It's a means to an ends, isn't it, at certain times?
Yeah.
So I've always worked, and then the youngest one, when I had her, I was back working within a week. So I've never had maternity leave. I've never had a break from it. It's not something I regret. It's not something I'd ever say I have any issues with. It's, you just balance, and if it's like anything in life, you just have to make what's right for you and your family. And I really believe with women, if it's right for them, it's right for their family.
Yeah. As you say, there is no manual. Everybody's life is utterly unique, and you just kind of live it to the best way you can. Not in the cliche sense. It's just get through it, and sometimes it's easier not knowing what's coming at you, because then you have no choice. And there was a really interesting quote. I think it was Meryl Streep recently, and she was saying, "I hate the term strong woman, because that just." Suggests that you have a choice. Every woman's strong because you just have to deal with stuff. And I don't actually think that's necessarily true just for women. I think it's equally true for men.
Of course.
I don't think there's a gender split there. But it's interesting to hear that in some elements the industry hindered your career path by having to stop work, by having to change your role with...
I wouldn't say it was necessarily the industry. I think it was just the employment laws back then. Which was fine. It was what it was.
Yeah. And I think, there's lots of protections in place for women now. I mean, I never got my maternity pay because that turned into advertising money. And I was back in the office because I didn't know what else to do. I was like, I don't know how to fill my day. I mean, by the time I'd sorted out feeding and everything, I got through that. And then I was like, well, I'll go back to the office. And our customers used to come in and they were horrified because Molly was in a cardboard box next to the to my computer desk. And they're like, why is she in a box? I'm like, well, why not? She's not going to roll off, is she? She loved it in there. Fast asleep. A few blankets, lovely. So yeah, you do just make it work. And I think that again goes back to just getting stuff done, and all these, it gives you a certain mindset. I think it makes you stronger. I definitely felt I could cope with more. I think there's days when I choose I didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, it's just what happens. I do remember I was on a course once, and I was so pleased that I was at Lancaster University, and it was I was helping with my career course, a leadership course, and my son, who was 7 at the time, got a call from the school to say that he had put a BB bullet down his ear. And I remember then I really regretted having kids. And I'm like, seriously? I'm like, can I not just finish my course at university today? And they're like, no, he's complaining, it's painful. So I'm like, all right. So I had to come home and talk about, I'm not joking, 8 hours later in 2 hospitals, we finally got this thing out. I remember I turned to him, I went, that's 8 hours of my life I'll never get back. I mean, that's really mean, but I did say to him, seriously? And he went, yeah, well. So, yeah, and that was one moment when I went, I'm not juggling anything very well. But, yeah, you just go with it, don't you? So.
Yeah, and look, they bring back misty-eyed memories when you... Then for the benefit of the podcasters, that was a look that I just got there.
I think it was a look you saw up there. So I look at them mostly like, really?
So if we move on to how the power of the mountain environment has played a role in our journeys, have you managed to stay active? I mean, you certainly look like you have. And do you take time to still venture out into the wild environment? I know it's not easy to find time, but do you still get out on your own with your family? What does getting out into the wild environment look like for you these days?
Yes and no. Yeah. Still ski a lot. That's a real passion. And my husband's a really good skier as well. And it's really nice to be with somebody when you both share something. Skiing's my absolute happy place because for me it's mindfulness. I just focus on every single turn and getting it right. And I just love that feeling of just being in the zone. It's really, really special. I mean, we couldn't afford to take the kids skiing when they were young, so it's just something we've managed to restart again now, and now they can go independently, so it's quite good. So yeah, we do get out. To be brutally honest, the festival takes up a lot of our time. It's a passion. We live and breathe it. I mean, I haven't had a day off now since August, which is not, I don't really self-tears. Don't think that for a minute. It's a choice. I'm not against that. So it is hard to get that balance. I'm a bit creaky. Both of us are feeling a bit sort of like we haven't had a chance to exercise. But yeah, we obviously living here, it's on your doorstep to a degree, except obviously in the summer when there's too many tourists and you can't get into the Lake District. But so for my 50th, we went round, I did a Tour de Mont Blanc, so with a bunch of friends, we walked that, which is fantastic, and I've got another one planned when I get to another big birthday.
Fantastic.
So I think that's something nice to aim for.
Yeah.
The children are all really active just from living here. Obviously, when they were younger, they moaned non-stop.
Yeah.
Most unsatisfying thing in your life. You have really grumpy kids on a walk, but that's where it was. You just fed them the whole time. But yeah, no, in general, like biking, still do sort of things like that when we can. But it's a balance, and which is funny because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It is a balance, and you never get it quite right because at the end of the day, I can't let this company fail and this organization not succeed.
Yeah.
So that's where my dedication goes to at the moment, and just know that the rewards will be there. I'll have more time and more energy.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and sometimes I feel guilty or selfish taking that time, because fundamentally, like any business, we've got 30 people, that's 30 livelihoods that we're ultimately responsible for. Yeah. Whatever decisions we take will affect those people, and that can weigh quite heavy.
Weighs really heavily.
Yeah, and it's and when it does weigh heavy, then that's when we disappear off, and we'll each take a separate holiday each year. We have done ever since the kids are small, so we can go and do our own thing. I'm not particularly into fishing, so Paul goes fishing.
I just clocked that. I didn't get that memo. No, I do go skiing with the girls. Yeah, that's right.
So and that's worked really well for us. And loads of people are like, "What? You take a separate holiday? You don't do everything together?" I'm like, no. We work together. We brought the kids up together. We're together every day, and sometimes it's just really nice. And I love just taking myself and my rucksack and my bivvy bag and just disappearing for 3-day trips. And I'll follow a long distance path or whatever. Or and this year, this year. I was 50 last year, so I did a trek across the longest pass in the Himalayas, which was fantastic, around the Manaslu circuit. That was brilliant. And I went with one of my oldest friends, which was just absolutely superb. And then just by sheer luck, I happened to mention I've been thinking about doing the Cape Wrath Trail for about the last 15 years, and our assistant manager in Ambleside, Ali, she's a force of nature. So she overheard it, and just appeared next to me and said, "Right, when are we booking a date then?" I was like, I can't fit that in. That's like 2 weeks. And she's like, no, let's get a date booked. And she booted me up the arse, and we did it. We did it a couple of weeks ago, and it was just, oh my God. We had a customer come with us as well, so there was 3 of us. I think our combined age was 151, and I think there's possibly some traumatised young men that we left on the trail. But we just had the best time. We laughed solidly for 200 miles. It was absolutely fantastic. So it's not easy. The hardest part about going on a run is like putting your shoes on in the morning, and that metaphor kind of just sort of broadens out. But once you've got to get out, you've got to make time, and I think it's very easy to say, whatever. I won't go out, but it's you need to get out, and you need to take those dips and come out and take those highs as well, because that's what gets you through the next dip, because there's another one coming.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a 4-day working week policy with the company. So after the festival, everyone goes down to 4 days a week. Although I tend to still work the Fridays, but in general, you just have that little bit more break. I think it's important for the team, because they're also working so incredibly hard these last few months. And what they all do is that they take that time to get outside and re-energize themselves, because we kind of talk about the festival being an endurance fest. I kind of think it's funny, all these really high-end athletes. I'm like, guys, you should try and work a festival.
Yeah.
We're in training all year round for this. It's like, we've had about 4 hours sleep each night, where, I don't know what I've eaten. I don't know, I have, and I've got a glass of Tenzing in here, so, for my breakfast. So it's the balance comes out the other side. But sometimes you don't get the choice, and it's just to have the mental space to go, it's just passing, and there's a means to an end, and it's the right thing to do. So I think that's half of it. If you start to get yourself down about it, then it's just a negative spiral. So
it's so easy.
You just got to be focused about what you're trying to achieve and know it's the right thing for now. Just a bit like motherhood. It's a bit tricky. It's like, it's just for now. It's just a moment, and it's a beautiful moment. Just like this is a beautiful moment, the festival. But you can't always get the balance right all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's very easy for folks to see on social media people posting all these photos and thinking, oh, they've got life nailed. What's going on with mine?
That's
it's like, no. You couldn't be any further from the truth.
No.
There are days when it all just goes wrong.
Not many, guys. Not many.
No, sometimes it's like buses, isn't it? All those bits, all those same things come along at the same time.
Yeah, well, I'm just checking the WhatsApp to see if anything else is going on. But, the e-bike was stolen last night outside the Riverside Hotel. There you go.
The e-bike? What?
Oh, no, the photographer's e-bike.
Oh, gosh, right.
Yeah, there you go. Update live from the festival. Do we need a police report? I'll put that to the audience. What do you reckon, guys?
So I did say earlier on, we are privileged to have been born into, just by sheer luck, to have been born into a part of the world where we have agency and the means to decide our own career paths. And there's a lot of women in the world who've had that taken away from them. We are privileged because many people before us, many women before us, have worked hard to make sure that we can get here to this point. I know this year we both stepped out of our comfort zone again, actually, is when we met to become members of the Outdoor Industry Association Women in Leadership programme. So this year we've each had 3 mentees, and to help continue the OIA vision, I suppose, of how we trickle down knowledge and experience to the next women coming through the industry. So how has that worked for you? Have you enjoyed that experience?
Yeah, it's been super interesting, but also we've talked, it goes both ways. They're learning from us, you're learning from them. Probably the biggest takeaway is that young women are so hard on themselves about being good and doing the right thing. And it's easy when you're older because you've sort of learnt, so you've got that inbuilt confidence. But I compare it to, and no disrespect to any males, of course, but they have a lot more inherent confidence in themselves. And I don't know where that comes from. Obviously I do, but how it's got there. But I sort of hear these females doubting themselves. And I'm like, no, you're doing everything right. Believe in yourself, and I have to keep constantly reminding them. They're just critics, that's all they are. They're just external critics, and I'm sure many men, I can't speak obviously for them, are internally saying the same voice, but they just don't voice it as much. So that's been the biggest thing, is just to constantly be their sort of sounding board to remind them that, they have got value in what they do and have confidence in their delivery. So I found that fascinating, supporting them through that.
That was a real eye-opener for me, because they all 3 said exactly the same thing. I don't know how I should behave at work. And I'm like, be yourself.
Or they just doubt themselves. And I'm like, you're amazing.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know. And one of the ladies was like, I've just got imposter syndrome. I said, you haven't. That's just you. And you need to be okay with that, because you're not going to go away. You're going to wake up when you're 30, 40, 50, and that same voice is still going to be there on the shoulder, and you're just going to have to learn how to slap it back down, basically. But it did really yeah, it was a surprise actually to hear that, because I'm sure you've done the same with your girls. It's just like, well, just crack on. You know, this is your life for you to lead. You do what you want to do. Don't build parameters around you that don't tell yourself you can't do stuff, because that's just not true. You might try stuff and it doesn't necessarily work out how you want, or you try it and think, nah, that's not for me. But it doesn't mean you can't do it in the first place, and use that experience. So it was fascinating seeing the industry through new eyes as well, because there's lots of, I'm always worried about using terms and throwing them in like male-dominated industry. And I am particularly worried about the whole male-female conversation, actually. I know we're talking about, you know, careers, motherhood and mountains, but people are people at the end of the day, and they've all got their own skill sets. They all communicate differently. It really doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. That given situation that you're in is your given situation, and it's up to you how you deal with that. And sometimes you deal with it differently as a woman, sometimes you deal with it differently as a man, but that situation has happened, and you've got to navigate that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say they've ever sort of brought up that there was any kind of male-female divide in the industries or what they do. That's not been the case. It's just this general sense of not being good enough, and I have no idea whether that's fed through, whether it's just them or that's still what young people. But I think women are just quite often very driven to be good, you know, the right version of what they want to be, so they're able to vocalize it. So they've just got a safe space to talk about it, which is I'm the sounding board to hear it.
Exactly.
But I can also see the journey they've gone on in the last 6 months, and they're planning it out. And one in particular has made quite strong choices of her next steps. Yeah. And it's just so rewarding. She's just got there, and you could see it from day one. That's what she wanted to get to. Yeah. But now she's actually making those steps. So those are nice conversations to have.
Oh, that's absolutely superb. And it's definitely been like a reciprocal experience for me, because it's really it's taken me back to my own company with questions, and you know, we need to we have never looked at this like this, you know, and how should we work with this, or I'm going to bring in this, or we're going to deal with that particular situation that way, because I think I've just sort of thought about a different viewpoint literally as a result of talking with the mentee. So all that experience that they think is trickling down, their energy is also trickling up, I think, is probably how I felt about it. I found it really, really, really beneficial. It's been really interesting. Not easy, putting extra time in.
Well, I've just taken another one, a new one.
Have you really? Oh, well done, you. Well done, you.
For punishment, that one, yeah.
So I think one of the key things that I've sort of taken away from this, and actually taken away from the mentee, or being a mentor as well, where these ladies have been like not confident, I've been just trying to sort of say, like, value your own stories, and that came about because one of my mentees said to me, "Oh, what was your journey into the industry?" I was like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about me. This is your space." I said, "No, I'd really like to know," and I explained it, and she was like, "Oh, wow," and I thought, well, what's wow about that? That's just my life. And I remember having a similar conversation with Val Brown, because I was like, "Val, you were a climber even before you met Joe. You've got your own story, and I'd love to tell that in our shop history if I can." And she was just like, "Oh no, nobody will be interested in that." And I kept trying, and then I didn't win that one. She's a very powerful lady, Val. But I did think, you know, when my mentee had said to me, "I just want to hear your story," my first response was, "Oh no." And same as this, you know, it's like first response, "Really?" And I thought, oh no, I haven't valued my own story, actually. Maybe I should think about that differently. And absolutely, at the festival here, there's some tremendous stories, men and women, you know. But I think the festival has been very, very important in broadening the platform for inclusivity and diversity and different people to speak more openly. And I think that's really important. So I think we need to value our own stories, whoever we are, and use the power of the mountains and own the privilege of deciding your own life path. And I think that was the sort of, someone said to me, one of the questions you should say is, what advice would you give? And I was like, well, I'm always loath to give advice, but I think it's quite a fair roundup of what we've been talking about. And I think fundamentally, if you're starting out, whatever career path you're doing, just live it. and just have fun doing it, because you spend most of your working life, you spend most of your life working, your adult life working, don't you? So if you're not enjoying what you're doing.
When you're passionate about what your business represents, it doesn't become work. It becomes, because I think that if you start, I'm privileged enough to acknowledge that my work and life, home balance all combined.
Yes.
But I think it's a really lovely way to live.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm dreading the Monday or looking forward to the Friday. It's just a combination, because the industry that we're in just does such wonderful things to support people's stories like we're talking about. But it's life, isn't it? It's not, we don't make widgets, we're really privileged in that. And I think if you're passionate about something in your life, you can make a career out of it, so to speak. Yeah. I don't mean make money. And I've got this great story, which one of my children said to me, "How did that person afford a very expensive house?" And I said they had a good job, and they went, "No, they've got a well-paying job." And I went, "Yeah, it's right." So a good job is what makes you happy, and then you can always make a life out of it. And it's not driven by how much money you get. I mean, obviously we need money to live, but it's how you feel about it, because there's so much wealth in feeling good about what you do and doing good with others. It's a very rewarding way of approaching living. So I think if I was a young person starting out, I would just be passionate about something, just anything, and there will be something along the lines that can fulfill you and also make yourself a valuable member of society. And that's how I'd look at starting a career again. And, I'd probably write a list with all the things you don't want to do as well.
That's definitely.
I really didn't want to be a dog groomer, in case anyone was interested what the top one was. I like dogs, just didn't want to groom them. There's a few others.
Oh, we are very sadly out of time. I think we could probably talk for much longer. There's a lot of stories, obviously, that you've alluded to that we need to maybe revisit at some point, Jacqui. But thank you very much for your time. This is a super busy time of the year for you, creating this magnificent festival. Steve was very keen for me to explain to people that you are the festival, you are the CEO. It doesn't happen without you. So it's a phenomenal event. I've said a number of times on the podcast, we've recorded about 13 at the event here this weekend, that it does feel like we've come back and we're with our mountain family, because we're seeing friends from years, and that's really, really important. So a massive thank you for joining us and taking the time out to speak with us today.
Well, it was my privilege. I'd also like to say that there is a big team that support, but I'm very brave. I'm very courageous about having a vision, and so I sweep them up with me, and then they deliver it. So it's full credit to them to listen to me and support me in it. And it wouldn't be a festival without that wonderful team and the volunteers that make this happen and everyone that joins it. So it's very sweet of my husband to say that it's me, but I'd like to say it's a few others, including himself.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you very much to the Kendal Mountain Festival team, and thank you very much to the Kendal Mountain Festival tech team as well for your support here today, and the Barrel House for hosting such a fantastic venue. You can listen to more than 50 podcasts of Outdoor Gear Chat, including KMF special podlets with brands and sponsored athletes talking about the passion that goes into equipment, by searching Outdoor Gear Chat on your favourite podcast provider.